Welcome back, True Crime Army. I am your host, Margot, and this is Military Murder, a show where I focus on crimes committed by military members and veterans. But don't worry, you don't have to know anything about the military to listen, I promise. True crime just has to be your go-to genre, and if that's you, welcome home. I am your people. Before I begin today, I just wanted to say thank you for those of you that showed up for my first Netflix date night with me just a few weeks ago. I invited everyone to watch the 2-part docuseries on Jerry Springer, Lights, Camera, Action. The way you got the invite is if you were a part of my Patreon, including all free members. So make sure that you check out my Patreon, patreon.com/militarymurder, to sign up for any future date nights I may host. So if you haven't signed up yet, get on it. It was such a fun night that I plan on doing that again in the future. Okay, so I wanted to plug that since it was nice to watch a show with others while using the chat feature to kind of reminisce about all of us growing up and watching Jerry Springer and all that jazz. And listen, today's episode, it would have been an episode of Jerry Springer back in the day. All right, with that, let's get into today's case. Today, I am taking you to Louisiana. I've never brought you a case out of Fort Polk, but I guess there is a first time for everything. I heard about this case as it was unfolding back in 2018, and the media information appeared to be all over the place. If you can believe this, I put in a FOIA request into the Army back in 2020, and after following up year after year after year, in 2024, I finally got the records that I have been waiting for. During the episode that I'm going to share with you, I get to draw from the actual military court-martial documents to discuss admissions, statements of fact, and ultimately the results of the court-martial. And right before this call, I ended up having to call the Calcasieu court, and I got records from there as well. So, without any further delay, although I am a patient person considering I have been waiting 4 years to tell you this story, join me today as I tell you the tragic story of Shelena Kyle. Now, let's dig in. Our story begins on October 21st, 2018, when the Calcasieu Parish 911 call center received a mysterious call from an older man. The man reported that he believed his girlfriend's granddaughter and her boyfriend had a dead body in the trunk. I am sure the dispatcher was like, "Say again now?" During the call, the man repeated his disturbing claim and provided his location. Within minutes, authorities arrived at the man's home trying to understand the gravity of what they had just heard. That's when the man revealed that earlier in the day, his girlfriend's granddaughter, Sarah Parker, and her boyfriend, Logan Kyle, had sought his help to dispose of a body that they claimed was in the trunk of their vehicle. He never saw the body. Responding officers asked if the man knew the whereabouts of the couple and the car, and Sarah's grandmother actually did. You see, she had some version of Find My Phone where she could see Sarah's location on her phone. A few calls were made and authorities tracked down the car, but they quickly learned that Sarah's 2 young children, ages 1 and 2, are also in the vehicle, so they must proceed with extreme caution in approaching this vehicle. Just after 10 p.m., Sarah's car was spotted on North Franklin Street in Lake Charles. To avoid alarming the couple in the vehicle, police discreetly followed the vehicle to wait for legal cause to make the stop. And just as soon as there was a reason, police lights lit up the sky. The car complied and pulled over, and the cops, actually hands on their guns ready to pounce, asked everyone to exit the vehicle. As everyone got out, Sarah exited out of the driver's side door, and Logan Kyle exited out of the passenger side. The small children remained in the back seat. The kids were eventually moved by the police, and that's when the cops looked in the trunk. And just as the 911 caller predicted, there was a dead body in the trunk. It was the body of a young woman. Both Logan Kyle, who I will refer to as Kyle for the remainder of the episode, and Sarah were taken into custody, and the children were left in the care of the state. Kyle's interrogation began just past midnight that night. After waiving his right to remain silent, he shared his version of events. And while I'm sure the detectives in this case may have dealt with other murder cases, none were quite like this. Over the course of the interrogation, Kyle revealed the dead woman was his pregnant wife. The driver of the car was his pregnant girlfriend. He was an active duty soldier, and he was leading a secret life as a transgender woman named Lola. Shelena Rae and Logan Kyle met while attending William Henry Harrison High School in Indiana. During high school, the couple dated on and off, but after Kyle graduated, he decided to join the Army in 2014 to follow in his father's footsteps, and the couple decided to call it quits. Kyle was assigned to infantry, and his first duty station was in Italy. While Kyle was in the Army, he and Shelena reconnected, and as most military things go, they decided to get married. Kyle returned from Italy, and in August of 2016, the couple was married. During the marriage, Shelena decided to give the Army a shot, and after going to a recruiter, she joined the Army as well. She told her mother she was really excited for the military, and she thought she was really going to make a difference. She wrote her mother often from boot camp, but shared that she had been injured and that she was trying to work through her injury and kind of keep it low-key because she didn't want to get sent home. But as luck would have it, Shelena's injury was too severe to continue serving, and she was sent home from the Army. Shelena was devastated, as most people who have the military dream, would be really upset. But she was married to a tall, handsome military man, and she could still go to college. By February of 2017, Kyle had been assigned to the 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Division at Fort Polk, and Shelena joined her husband there. The couple had their ups and downs, some financial issues, but they were making it work. But within a year of marrying and getting sent home from boot camp because of an injury, Shelena and Kyle would have yet another big thing happen. Not surprisingly, a deployment. That's right. By late summer of 2017, Kyle received orders to Iraq, and off he went. Shelena really didn't want to stay by herself at Fort Polk, so while her husband was deployed, she returned to her family in Indiana to await her husband's return. Well, what can I tell you? Kyle took this opportunity while he was deployed to find love in other places, specifically Tinder. While deployed, Kyle met a woman on Tinder. Now, I'm going to call this first woman that he meets Amy. Her real name was redacted in the files that I received from the Army, so if her real name happens to be Amy, that is a complete fluke. Anyway, Amy was either recently divorced or going through a divorce, and Kyle used the typical military cheaters line. He told Amy, yeah, me and my wife were also getting divorced, which would have been a surprise to Shelena, who was back in Indiana awaiting her husband's return. Kyle and Amy became close on Tinder, albeit they hadn't met in person, but Kyle shared a part of his life that very few people knew about. He told Amy that he was a transgender woman that went by Lola, and that he was also into BDSM, bondage-type sex stuff. Kyle revealed to Amy that things didn't work out with his wife Shelena because she was not very accepting of his lifestyle. Amy, however, she didn't seem to care about that. She would later reveal to investigators that she felt a deep connection to Kyle/Lola, and they began a long-distance sexual relationship, exchanging sexual videos and photos, all while Kyle was deployed. Okay, so the thing about cheaters is that they cheat, and sometimes they even cheat on the person that they are cheating with another person. I know, it is a little bit like, how do you keep track? So, what do you think Kyle was doing while he was seeing Amy? Well, he was on Tinder meeting other women, and that's when he met another woman named Sarah Parker. So now, if you're tracking, Kyle is a transgender woman named Lola, he has a wife, and he has 2 girlfriends, and it's 2017, 2018, and the Army would not have been a fan of Kyle's secret transgender life. All that being said, Kyle returned back to Louisiana, and his wife joined him at their home there. And life went on. Shelena, the oblivious wife, not knowing what her husband was doing while deployed. At some point, Kyle snuck away and met Amy in person. They had sex one time in the back of his car, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and that was it. That was the last time they saw each other, although they did continue to talk. After meeting Amy, Kyle met Sarah Parker in person, and that was sometime in the late spring, early summer of 2018. And as soon as they met in person, they were hot and heavy. Kyle revealed during his interrogation that Sarah was everything that Shelena was not. She called him pretty, she called him baby girl, she accepted Lola, and she was even helping him to transition into a woman. And behind the scenes, Kyle was trying real hard to keep his wife from finding out about Sarah. But lo and behold, Shelena eventually found out, and she was not happy. On July 22nd, 2018, Shelena sent the following message to her husband, quote, "You lied, you have cheated, you have depleted our bank account, you've humiliated me, you have enraged me, you want me to be dominant? Fine, there will be consequences for your actions. You owe me for the time that you've spent with other women, and I will collect that debt, darling," end quote. When Shelena sent this message, she still had no clue about Sarah. She had only become aware about Amy. And you better believe that Shelena called Amy and there was a confrontation. Amy initially denied doing anything with Kyle, but as the conversation progressed, the women began to discuss Lola, and Amy told Shelena that she should be more supportive of her husband. Well, the following day, as Shelena continued to snoop around, Shelena learned about Sarah Parker. Now wait, because this is no longer a love triangle, this is a love square. Shelena called Amy to tell her about Sarah, and now Shelena and Amy were both mad at Kyle. Meanwhile, that very weekend, Kyle was no kidding spending the weekend with his side piece, Sarah. And when his phone rang off the hook, Kyle didn't answer his wife's calls. So Amy, side piece number 1, called Sarah, side piece number 2, and was like, "Tell Kyle to call his wife, or we, together, both of us, are going to report him to his command for having an affair and for being transgender." Kyle was now beyond himself. He was freaking out. Everything was falling so quickly. After this Jerry Springer type shenanigans transpired, Shelena and Kyle decided to try to work it out. And basically it was Kyle telling his wife to calm down and not report him. Kyle begged and pleaded. He promised his wife that he had ended things with Sarah, which of course was a lie. Meanwhile, fast forward a few weeks, and guess what? Shelena learned that she was expecting her first baby. Shelena was over the moon, and while Kyle pretended that he was happy about the baby, he wasn't. And then, guess what? Sarah, side piece number 2, she found out she was also pregnant. While she was pretty sure it was Kyle's baby, according to one of her close friends, it could possibly have been some other dude's baby, but what do you expect in this story? But listen, Shelena, the wife, had zero clue that Sarah was pregnant because she was under the impression that her husband had ended things with her. But she was very wrong. By October of 2018, according to Logan Kyle, his life was a train wreck. He felt like the walls were caving in. He confessed, quote, "I felt trapped, essentially living 2 lives. Sarah just made me happy, and I saw no feasible way of being with her. And yet I couldn't be myself with Shelena, but I couldn't get away from Shelena," end quote. So at that point, Kyle decided to kill himself. He wanted to fall asleep and just never wake up. On October 19th, 2018, Kyle took an alleged deadly dose of sleeping tea. He combined peppermint tea with an unknown amount of Unisom sleeping pills. He fell asleep, but to his surprise, he woke up the following afternoon. He admits that he had a headache, but that didn't last long, and the day appeared to progress as normal. But what a lot of people don't discuss is that someone's suicidal intentions can quickly turn into homicidal intentions, and that would play out later that day. That Saturday afternoon, Kyle and Shelena were taking a bath together. Kyle sat with his back towards the wall and his feet towards the faucet, and his wife sat between his legs with her back against his chest. Kyle was brushing Shelena's hair in what I can only imagine was supposed to be a peaceful moment, or at least it should have been. As Kyle brushed his wife's hair, he told her that he really wanted to grow out his own hair once he left the army. He then commented that if his hair got long enough, Shelena would be the one brushing his hair. Now, this comment reminded Shelena about Lola, and as we are all well aware, Shelena was not a fan of Lola. In that moment, Shelena responded with disdain. She informed Kyle that she was not a fan of Lola, and that she didn't support his future plans to transition into a woman. Kyle recalled that Shelena then mocked him, saying something to the effect of, "You are never going to be a pretty woman. I don't even know why you try so hard." And then she said something like, "You are going to become a, quote, mental deficient, end quote." In that moment, Kyle revealed to investigators that he thought enough was enough. And after long wishing his wife dead, he decided in that moment that he was going to kill her. Being in the best possible position, Kyle pulled his wife closer to his chest and he placed her in what he called a blood choke, which is basically a chokehold. Shelena had no idea what was happening, but as he cut off her circulation, her legs and body just splashed water all over the bathroom as she tried to break loose. At one point, she was able to turn her head upwards to look into her husband's eyes, but he didn't let go. After minutes of holding her in that position, her body stopped moving. And despite having a cramp in his arm, Kyle held on until he knew she was dead. Then Kyle stood up and got out of the bathtub, soaking wet. As he looked back at the bathtub, he saw Shelena dead, lying on her stomach with her head in the water. For the next 15 to 30 minutes, Kyle did his best to clean up. He dried up the floor. I'm assuming he got dressed. He then went to the garage and opened the trunk of his car. He grabbed a blanket or a bedsheet of sorts to wrap his wife's body. And then he drained the bathtub, hoisted his wife's body out of the tub, and wrapped her in the blanket. He then carried her to the garage where he placed her on the floor. And that's when he realized that he needed some leverage, an easier way to transport the body. So he grabbed a pair of shoelaces from some shoes that were in the garage. He placed the laces around Shelena's neck and then around her two wrists, binding it together. Then he wrapped her nude body in the blanket and placed her in the trunk. Then he ran around his house packing an overnight bag for himself, and then he got into his vehicle, drove away from 16510A Howard Street, exited Fort Polk, and began his drive towards Sarah's house in Lake Charles. During the drive, Kyle texted and spoke to Sarah, kind of low-key informing her that they didn't have to worry about his wife anymore. He told her he was on his way, so he wanted her to be ready. At around 6 p.m., Kyle started thinking about work. So he texted his squad leader and told him something about going to Lake Charles with his wife to eat at Olive Garden and that they were going to spend the night there to sightsee the following day in Lake Charles. The squad leader gave the thumbs up, and now Kyle thought he had time. As soon as Kyle arrived at Sarah's house, he checked out her trunk space and moved a few things around. Then it was either by himself or with Sarah's help. It's really unclear whether they helped each other or whether he did it himself. They moved Shelena's body from Kyle's trunk to Sarah's trunk. Then they went about their Saturday night as if nothing happened. And I'm not even kidding you. They have surveillance video of these two acting like two young teenagers, just typical Saturday night stuff. You ready for this? First, they stopped at a sex shop called The Love Shack. There's surveillance video of them there, and Kyle spent close to $250. And I know you don't care to know what he bought at The Love Shack, but I'm going to tell you anyway. He purchased an anal anchor, a Lush strap-on, a red wig, and a lacy bra. From the Love Shack, they drove to Walmart. There, they purchased a huge tote big enough to fit a body and 2 packs of duct tape. After this, they checked into a Motel 6, did the hanky-panky, then left the room for dinner. On Sunday morning, they both did meth, Kyle admitting later to investigators that that was his second time doing meth and that he had specifically requested it that morning. Of course, the couple also talked about ways to dispose of the body, who could help them dispose of the body, and that's when Sarah got a brilliant idea. She thought her grandma's boyfriend might be willing to help, which is really suspect if you think you know someone who might be willing to help you hide a body, but who am I? Later that day, Sarah went to get her kids, and then Sarah, Kyle, and the 2 kids headed to Sarah's grandma's house. For purposes of this story, I'm going to call her grandma's boyfriend her granddad, just to make it easier, right? While at the house, Sarah took her granddad to the side and without warning was just like, can you help us dispose of a body? I'm sure this man was shocked. I mean, it's not every day you get this type of request, right? He was like, where is there a dead body? Calmly, Sarah said that the body was in the trunk. The man was shocked. He probably thought she was kidding. And he further asked questions, well, is it a woman or a man? Where is the crime scene? And Sarah was oblivious to this poor man's plight because she continued in La La Land, just telling him that the victim deserved to die, and then went into a monologue about wanting to dismember the body and dispose of it in a swamp behind her dad's residence. Then, as Sarah was brainstorming, she was like, oh, we can also place the body in a bin and fill the bin with cement and get rid of it that way. Then Sarah looked at her granddad and asked, can we bury the body in one of your properties? The man, still stumped, was like, immediately no. Immediately no. He was like, no, no, no. And if you do, you are going to get caught. Sarah was like, okay, I was just asking. Then they reunited with Kyle. Not too long after, Kyle, Sarah, and the kids drove off. And that was when Grandpa revealed to the police that he was in so much shock that he had to just sit there for a good 15 minutes and he was shook. Then he told his girlfriend what transpired and they called 911. After Kyle spoke to the civilian authorities, he was transferred to the Army CID. There, he again waived his rights and made another statement. Sarah Parker also made a statement to the police, where she basically corroborated everything that transpired after Kyle arrived at her house on October 20th. When investigators were sent to Kyle's Fort Polk residence, they found 3 dogs, and the scene looked similar to what Kyle described. A search of his car, a 2017 Nissan Sentra, well, it revealed a medium-sized suitcase containing women's clothing, lingerie, a wig, nail polish, and a penis strap-on. Now, wait a damn minute. You mean to tell me that these items were already in the car before he killed his wife? Possibly. Or this was his overnight bag that he packed after killing his wife? I mean, this is so cruel. A forensic analysis of Kyle's phone revealed that he had 2 videos from Sarah, that was mistress number 2, where basically she rants and raves. The first pep talk went something like this. Don't listen to them. They're all f***ing stupid and you're the shit and I love you and you're my princess, so it doesn't matter what the they say. Like all them can go f*** themselves, die in a ditch and then bum somewhere else in a different hole for all I care. You're beautiful. You're amazing. I love you. End quote. The second pep talk from Sarah went something like this. Quote, all of them are f***ing stupid and don't even deserve to know you. So I say again, the whole die in a ditch thing. I'm going to stand pretty firm on that one. Ugh, yeah, they don't even deserve the ditch. Like seriously, just out of a truck, off a building, just anything. I don't care. Actually, you know what? Out of a truck would be better than off a building because off a building would be too quick. They'd be really scared on the way down, but it'd be really quick death. So I don't really see that being what I would choose for them, but f all of them because they're stupid. I love you too. End quote. Many people were interviewed during this case, and one of Sarah's friends admitted that Sarah would often vent that life would be easier if Shelena was not in the picture. And on a few occasions, Sarah asked her friend to brainstorm on ways to get rid of a body. And by the way, this was way before Shelena was murdered. Which makes you wonder, was Shelena's death planned? During the search, authorities found Kyle's Google searches, and they revealed how callous he was about murder. Hours after killing his pregnant wife, he used his phone to Google cheap hotels, adult store, fast food, and the lyrics of a song called Lola the Kinks. On October 21st, before getting caught, he even searched, can you report a kidnapped adult right away? Okay, so this case, in my opinion, appeared to move at the speed of light for an Army case. And it's likely because, of course, Logan Kyle was placed in what we call pretrial confinement, and he was at Leavenworth. The Article 32 hearing, which is akin to a preliminary hearing, that took place in early December of 2018, and it was held at the Joint Regional Confinement Facility at Fort Leavenworth. Kyle stood charged with conspiracy to commit murder, premeditated murder, intentionally killing an unborn child, adultery, obstructing justice, child endangerment, and wrongful use of meth. There were no witnesses called at this Article 32 hearing, but there was a butt-ton of documentary evidence. After analyzing all of the evidence that was presented, the preliminary hearing officer, aka the FO, had one big recommended change to the original charges. The FO found one significant issue with the murder charge. While he found probable cause that Kyle committed a murder, the FO concluded that there was not sufficient evidence to prove, even at the lower Article 32 standard, that the murder was premeditated. After it was all said and done, the convening authority, however, reviewed the FO's report, ignored the recommended change, and Kyle proceeded to court-martial on all of the original charges, including premeditated murder. After this, there were various motions filed by both the government and the defense, and it appears that after various unsuccessful motions and reconsideration requests, Kyle approached the government with a plea agreement. He was willing to plead guilty to some of the offenses in exchange for the remainder of the charges being dismissed. He also requested to cap any sentence to life with the possibility of parole. So just FYSA, for murder in the military, the minimum sentence is life with the possibility of parole, and the max is life without the possibility of parole, or was for this case. For whatever reason, the convening authority felt that the deal would allow for a swift trial date, as well as the prevalence of justice without the expense of a fully litigated trial. And with that, on June 3rd, 2019, months shy of a year after Shelena's death, Logan Kyle pled guilty to premeditated murder and causing the death of an unborn child. The remainder of the charges were dismissed. So I was able to take a look, I had like my own eyes on the stipulation of fact, which was dated May 21st, 2019. And that's actually what I used to put together most of this episode. It was over 20 pages and it was very detailed. Logan Kyle was found guilty at his guilty plea, and the case immediately transitioned into sentencing. Many family members showed up for Shelena, and it was evident that she was very much loved. She was described as this happy-go-lucky girl turned woman who was really excited to just be a mom. She helped whoever she could, whenever she could. For Kyle, only his mom took the stand for him. There were various support letters where I learned that in high school, Kyle was a lifeguard. He was also on the fencing team, and he played baseball almost his entire life. He was also an active participant in his church's youth group. Logan Kyle was also a military brat. His father was in the Army, and he was born in Hawaii. And after he was born, they moved around a little bit until his father retired as a first sergeant in the Army, and they returned to Indiana to be close to family. Kyle took the stand to give an unsworn statement. He basically said, "I'm sorry," and he asked his family not to attend because he didn't want to prolong the inevitable. His attorney was able to get out one traumatic experience that occurred to Kyle, and that was something that happened to him while he was stationed in Italy. In 2016, Kyle told the judge that just months before he married Shelena, one of his coworkers failed to report to work. So Kyle was asked to go to the person's dorm. He did, and eventually, upon making entry, Kyle found his buddy had hung himself in his closet. Immediately after this, the Army offered counseling, but apparently immediately canceled all sessions because they had to get back to training. By bringing this up, the defense attempted to say that this was the turning point for Kyle. In the end, the military judge sentenced Kyle Logan to life in prison with the possibility of parole. It was consistent with the plea agreement, so ultimately that was the sentence that Kyle received. He also received a dishonorable discharge from the Army, reduction to E1, and total forfeitures. Moments before I recorded this, or actually earlier today, I called the Calcasieu Parish courthouse in Louisiana to see about Sarah Parker because I couldn't find anything online. And I discovered that in August of 2019, she pled guilty to everything that she was charged with. She pled guilty to contributing to the delinquency of juveniles, obstruction of justice, and failure to report certain felonies. For her crimes, she was sentenced to 2 years in the Department of Corrections for the contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile ×2 because she had 2 kids, right? And for the charge of failure to report certain felonies, she was sentenced to 1 year. For the obstruction of justice by tampering with evidence, she was sentenced to serve 15 years in prison. However, 10 of those years was suspended, and the defendant was to serve 5 years with credit being given for the time served to run concurrent with the previously imposed sentences. So by that point, she had basically been in jail for almost a year, and so 4 more years after that. After she completed her 5 years, she was to be placed on supervised probation for 3 years. All right, so that's basically what she got. And this document is dated August 5th, 2019. Shelena Rae Kyle was born on Christmas Day, 1996, to her parents Michael and Carrie. She enjoyed hiking, swimming, and she was obsessed with animals, especially dogs and horses. Shelena was only 21 years old when she was murdered. True Crime Army, my heart goes out to Shelena and her family. What an absolutely tragic case. And honestly, I always say this, and I'll say it again. Divorce is better than murder. I think that Kyle felt like the walls were caving in, not because of his wife, but because of the Army piece. He didn't want the Army to find out about being a transgender woman. All right, True Crime Army, I want to say thank you so much for joining me for another episode. For those of you who have watched this video on YouTube, thank you so much. I'm not going to promise that I'm going to make a video for all my podcast episodes, but this was one that I definitely felt compelled to. All right, so just so you know, my main sources for this episode was the trial transcript that I got from the Army, the motions filed in the case, and the stipulation of fact. If it was not for my FOIA request, it would have been close to impossible to provide such a detailed description of this case, as the reporting was very vague and kind of floofy. All right, Military Murder is a Mama Margot production. Executive producers are Myrtle, Falcon 13, and Jen. The music was created by Ty Ops. Until next time, remember, you never really know what someone is capable of, so remain vigilant always. You have a fabulous week, and I'll keep digging to bring you another military murder story next time.